Well, good evening to everybody. I just wanted to say that the talk really resonated with me as a clinician, but primarily as a parent. I have two boys, a 14-year-old who is a big sports football guy, and baseball and basketball. And I have an 11-year-old who is not a sports guy, and that's his definition. He loves playing with his friends. He loves being out in recess and playing soccer, but he does not like organized sports. And I think what is most striking is that by his own definition, he's not a sports guy. And socially, what that means is that he's not able to hang out with the crowd of athletes. And that's what they're called. Now, he's in 5th grade, and this was his definition since 3rd grade. He said he couldn't be with the athletes. As you can imagine as a parent, that's a really hard thing to hear, especially when I see this incredible, funny, wonderful kid who has so much to offer, but because of the lack of participation in organized sports, wasn't able to shine in the same way. And so as a clinician, I work with a lot of kids who are both athletes and secretly don't want to be athletes. And then I work with a lot of kids who, like my younger son, Michael, really like to just hang out with their friends, but don't have enough opportunities to be able to do that in a way that really highlights their strengths. So what I'm thinking is that sports actually are terrific for mental health and well-being. We know the benefits of exercise on mood. We know the benefits of camaraderie, of problem-solving, resolution, conflict resolution, all of those things. But what happens is that there comes a point, and research is telling us that kids are not enjoying sports for the sake of enjoying them. So several studies have taken a look at kids right around 5th and 6th grade, and that's when they start turning from really liking doing what they're doing and enjoying being on the teams to feeling like it's a little bit more of a chore, to feeling like it's a little bit more of resume building, and feeling like, well, I'm not doing this the way that I want to do it. And so we need to think about why is that shift happening, and why is it that for them it's not really bringing the psychological, mental health, and well-being aspect of it, but it's actually bringing about more stress. The other piece that I think is really tough is that I'm sure a lot of you have heard it, because I know that Wellesley as a district has been taking a look at mindset and growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And fixed mindset is when kids, people believe that their talent is predetermined, right? So by 3rd grade, 4th grade, we'll know who the really good athletes are. And they're gonna stay on that track, and that's who they are, right? But actually, what we know is healthier from a psychological perspective is to have a growth mindset. And that means that you don't really think things are predetermined. It's really the effort that you put into it, but more importantly, the internal motivation that you have that's driving you towards getting to a particular goal. That's why we have kids who maybe after being cut a couple of times from teams, you say, you know what, I'm gonna keep going, because I don't care what that coach said, I'm gonna try it a different way. And that growth mindset is actually what's helping kids from a sports perspective, but also from an academic and social perspective. And so I think that we really need to start combining everything about the child, not just sports, not just academics, but really thinking about how can we as adults promote this growth mindset in a way that will promote greater self-esteem, that will promote greater internal motivation, and that will promote more resilience over the long run.
All right, just to give a little bit of background, I've got 3 kids. I've got a 9-year-old, a 11-year-old, and a 13-year-old, all involved in sports in some way or another. And what Bob said also really did resonate with me. In fact, I have a complete talk about overuse injuries in kids that basically mimics exactly what he was saying, that our kids are involved these days in too many organized sports and not enough just play. And I think the bottom line is, for me, I see a lot of kids who are coming in with overuse injuries. I see knee injuries, elbow injuries, shoulder injuries, hip injuries, you name it, ankle injuries. I see them, and I see the parents that bring them in. And oftentimes, I will try to even have a discussion with the child without the parent there. Do they really want to be doing this? What's their motivation for doing the sport that they're doing? And I think, a lot of us have imposed what we want on our kids. We want them to be the next Tom Brady. We want them to be the next so-and-so. And maybe that's not what they want. I think it's really important to address that. For me, one of the big things that I try to stress to the families that come in to see me is they have an overuse injury because they are trying to do too much with bodies that are growing too fast. Kids have a growth plate, and they have, and what ends up happening is the muscles that they are trying to develop are stronger than the bones, when you're growing. And so what ends up happening is if you start doing a repetitive activity over and over and over again, i.e. throwing a baseball, you start putting traction on the bones, and you actually can literally affect the growth of the bones in your body, at your knees, at your shoulder, at your hips, to detrimental levels in the future when they're 30 or 40 years old. And what happens is this happens in kids who are playing sports year-round. And I mean the same sport. I mean sport specializations. One thing I think Bob has mentioned is you should not specialize in a sport until really you're at puberty. And for some boys, that's 15 or 16. For some girls, that's 14 or 13 or even 10. But you shouldn't specialize in a sport until your bones have really finished developing. Otherwise, you could significantly affect the growth and the future of their joints. I think one of the big things is that if you are going to do a sport, you should have a period of rest. We suggest, as the American Orthopedics Society of Sports Medicine recommends, at least a 3-month break. You should never really play any sport year-round. 9 months is still too much. I've stressed that in my own kids. I will not let them play a single sport for the whole year. I will not let them do AAU baseball 2 seasons in a row. They will do one thing each quarter, and that's all they'll do. In the summer, they do nothing. And so, I'm not going to let them, do something until they're 15 or 16 years old. I'm trying to practice what I preach.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp. I just want to get, you say it can't get back to the way that it was. I so much want to get back to the way that it was. I had Aldea Street. I had the Kenilworth. It was the same, and I just feel like today that the kids are just doing too much. Too many seasons are overlapping. Kids are. I've got kids not coming out for basketball at the high school because their club coach, whatever it be, baseball, soccer, whatever it is telling them that they can't or they're going to have to miss, and it's putting them in tough spots. And I just want athletes to just be athletes. You play the sport that you played in the season, and you move on to the next sport the following season. And then maybe in the summer it can overlap if you're at the high school level where, you might have a captain's practice here and that. But I'm just seeing way too many kids doing too many things. And in some ways I'm part of the problem, and I've tried to fight it. I'll do pride clinics, and people will say, well, Glenn, you got to do your pride clinics in the fall, and I'll put it off because I know that the kids are coming from soccer and football to come to my clinic, and that puts me as being part of the problem, right? So I struggle with that, and I just think that personally, I think a lot of this club stuff is not really healthy with these kids playing as much as they're playing. And I think ultimately you end up seeing the overuse injuries that you're seeing. And I'm going to do my best to get it back to old school. Hey, when I drive around town in my car and I see kids playing in the driveway, 3-on-3 hoops, or 1-on-1, or 2-on-2, or 1-on-0, I get out of my car and I toss them a T-shirt. And they're like, who are you? I says, you know what? What you're doing right now is a lost art. This is what we used to do. And some of my best moves that I ever had were myself, playing against myself in the alley. And every time I did it, I never lost. Dead serious. Fake left, go right bank, going up against Wilt Chamberlain. 1 second left on the shot, on the clock. I shoot it. I miss it, but I got fouled. Now I got 3. Now I got 3 to make 2. The old 3 to make 2. Missed the first. I still got 2 more. I always won. It's a lost art. So when I'm driving around town, if I see kids playing in the driveway, I toss them a T-shirt, Wellesley basketball. So I think we can get back. I really do. Or I hope we do.
Thanks, Glenn. So I've known Joe since college, and he's always loved sports and playing games, and he was like that with baseball. But when you see the Terriers, and I've coached with him, he loves it. He loves getting the kids together. He loves having them out there and trying to help them. And, you know, he likes to have fun. And I look at when I played sports and when I've watched my kids play sports, you know, if they're not having fun, then it's probably a moot point, because whether it's structured or unstructured, they're probably going to get better. They'll get better when it's structured, but they'll get a lot better if it's unstructured. And Bob talked about his passion. Like, if they love playing, they'll get better. And if they're not that talented, they'll love, you know, playing with their buddies. They'll have all these small victories. And I was, just an example, I was in this, I got a chance to play in a Pro-Am golf event. And I play golf like once or twice a year. I had to find my clubs, and I went, and this guy was a pro. I thought it was great. I was hitting these unbelievable shots. And after, he said something to me. He said, if I, you know, the thing with golf now, it's my job. Like, it's, if I have one bad shot, it bothers me all day. I was like, if I have one good shot, I'm thrilled all day. So, and then that's what happens when people specialize. Like, you're not trying to be evil to your 9-year-old, but the minute you're really trying to push them to get, you know, better and better, and you're going to put them in situations with coaches who are sort of, that's their mandate, is to make the kid the best player he can make them in kind of a short period of time. And the best way to do that is make it no fun and just, you know, do drills and do all this stuff. And I think having the perspective of my oldest, who's now in college, we resisted that, and it was by accident, really. But what I've seen with a lot of kids is they just kind of lost the passion for it. And where it helped them a lot to specialize in the beginning, by the 13 or 14 or 15, they were so burnt out and just, they wanted to do anything else. And Nadja mentioned that, where her patients are not doing it for themselves. And, you know, the simple part of it is make it fun. And if they're smiling and laughing, whether they win or lose 2 seconds after the game, that's sort of the best thing for me. And then the last thing I'd say is it's like goes by in a blink of an eye. So, you know, I used to bitch and moan about you know, going to Worcester or Nashua, but enjoy it, you know, because it does go by fast.
John, do you mind sharing with us that John's son Jack is a great friend, and he was over our house a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about a lot of this stuff. He was talking specifically about, I think it was either his 11 or 12-year-old season, and a phenomenal athlete, baseball player, and how he was pushing his dad, like, hey, Dad, I want to play. I don't want to just play for a little league team. I want to play for this, you know, club team or that club team, and how you kind of had to hold it back a little bit.
Well, yeah, this is a good example of where sort of, you know, I was having a little, you know, you're a parent, right? So he had, you know, done well, and somebody called somebody from this other town who, after the season, is putting a group of kids together, and they were going to go to some other state and, you know, beat the pants off these unsuspecting teams. And, you know, some of the guys that he knew were doing it, and he really wanted to do it. But, you know, it was like, I was just like, look, you had a great season, now let's go do something else. Like, let's sign up for something else. And we had flag football, and I was like, I don't think we can do both. So, you know, that was a little bit of, you know, he was upset about it, and, you know, but that was where I really did feel like, and I tried to explain to him that you learn from playing different sports. You know, in this case, baseball came really easy to him. He never practiced baseball. It was just easy for him. In other sports that he struggled at, I said, that's going to make you a better player, because you have to draw and develop different types of skills. So, you know, we'll play plenty of baseball games. Now it's time for flag football in this case. And so, you know, and looking back on it, I think, you know, he would probably agree with me that was a good move.
They've got the Green Monster Wiffle Ball fence in their backyard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Next
Yeah.
next to the trampoline.
Yeah, Joe's maybe like so my wife had all sisters, and so her mom bought us a trampoline, and it has a net around the side, and so they have helmets on in there, and they play football on the trampoline, and it wasn't grandma's intention, but like I'm sort of like, listen, they get hurt doing anything, but Doc Yen we know, so we just call him up, we'll fix him up, but there's wiffle ball, there's a cooler juice boxes, and there's a ton of kids playing wiffle ball all the time in the summer, and I think it's the greatest because they figure it all out, and so that was it's a recurring thing. You get a lot out of playing with your friends, and the lessons from sports are learned then as much as they are with somebody trying to overlord.
I think one thing that would be very helpful would be if we could try to get all the groups together, sit down together, we're all dealing with this together, and say, like, what are you guys doing about this? What are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? And try to get some dialogue between the youth sports groups here in our town. Try to get some consensus on what do we all think the best way to do this for our kids is, and then just keep that going from year to year. I think that would be a huge improvement. To me, and I really think the problem is, and you hate the stereotype, but I think the private clubs are absolutely the problem. I really do. I think for the most part, the community-based youth sports organizations are comprised of people who are trying to do the best thing they can for all of the kids.
I'm going to
now, they're still not perfect.
For a second, because I'm going to tell you, one, it's a big moneymaker, so you're not going to stop that train. It is a huge moneymaker.
Oh, no,
and
there's
two,
not.
if there wasn't, and I don't like it either, trust me, but if
Right.
there wasn't demand, we would all be pushing our kids. I feel like I'm already in third grade, my kids have to pick a club to play soccer, and I don't even want to drive, I don't want to be involved in it, but you feel like you're obligated to do it because
Right.
somehow.
And that's, so part of it, I think, is educating parents that the common perception out there may be that if your kid does need to be on this team, and then talk to some experts who will say, not one, they don't need to be, two, you're actually hurting your child by putting them on one of these teams at such a young age, and educate people and get that message out. And will it take time? Yes, it will. But we're starting right here. And then I think we just try to, in our own community, I think we can do it. Beyond that, it will take even more effort, but I absolutely do think that that it can be done.
And I also think that, I think like John said, he said, when he told his son, you're not going to do it. I think as parents, I remember when I was 6 years old, my buddy came home and he was signed up for T-ball. And I came from a divorced family too, and I called my dad. I said, Dad, can I play T-ball? And I was pumped, and he says, are they going to keep score? And I said, well, yeah. And he said, no, you can't. What? If they keep score, you're too young, you can't play. I was crushed, but now I understand. And then back to your question, I've been involved in those tryouts, and it's a crapshoot. I mean, they're all the same. And now you're supposed to pick an A, B, and a C team. I would just say, pick even teams. And don't call it A, don't call it B, don't call it C, and just let if you have to pick a team, pick it so that it's even.
It's not just the private soccer clubs or any sports clubs. It's not just the private clubs. I mean, like Wellesley Youth Soccer, sorry if anyone hears from Wellesley Youth Soccer, but I mean, they stratify those kids beginning in third grade. And, I've never seen such high level of stress among a group of parents than third grade parents whose kids are going to the first tryouts in the spring of third grade year. I mean, you think it was like, the World Hunger Project. But I mean, if what you're saying and everybody's buying into it, it's like, why is this town still stratifying kids in soccer in third grade and AAU basketball in fourth grade, which is another. I was going to ask Bob about that. AAU basketball is another one. They stay away from basketball season purposely so they can have another high-stress environment, even more high-stress environment out of season. I mean, so we're doing it to ourselves. I mean, so should the town, if it's really going to tackle this issue, like you said, not stratify anything until high school?
Is there anybody here tonight from any of the management organizational levels of any of the sports teams here in Wellesley?
No, they don't want to hear it.
Right, that's ridiculous.
We have not been able to, but I will say that our board this year has voted to have all third graders play together for the first time in many years. They used to stratify the third graders, okay? All of them playing together. All fourth graders are playing together this year in the spring, okay? So that group is heading in. We still have a long way to go. We still have a long way to go, but it's like the awareness of it, I think, is out there. And for these leagues to make change, it's like, I wish we could do it all at once. It gets complicated, but they're moving in that direction and they're talking about it, and that's a good step.
The fact that none of them are here tonight is very either telling, surprising, or should be embarrassing. That none of them
Get shots of the people.
There should be somebody from soccer,
I mean,
from basketball, from lacrosse, from hockey.
and so how do you get them all here? That's the question.
They were definitely invited multiple times. We will definitely, I can say this, we will make sure that we get them together and talk about it because, that it should be done. We owe it to the kids.
And the thing that I'd like to say too is if you could, so for instance, we have a daughter who is on and I say this unfortunately, the A team, and she's only in 5th grade. She's the only kid on her team that doesn't play club. And I've tried to have the talk with a lot of parents on the side, like this is crazy, and I'm like the outcast on this team. I really, I tiptoe around there, and the thing that I'd love to see is if we could get all those heads here, which I did email a bunch of them, and I got radio silence. So, but if we could, so it's not just the heads. I mean, they need to trickle down, but it's the parents that are coaching these kids. Like, I'm scared. I think you have to be really careful. Like, if we could get these coaches to have to sit and listen to them. 'Cause I'm sure everyone here is all on the same page.
It should be a
Like, I get
prerequisite
crazy
before you
about
can
this.
coach.
That's right. In fact, sorry. Joey, I think this has been great, Bob, and essentially we're preaching to the converted. I mean, we're here because we wanted to hear more of what you have to add and obviously from our panel. But I don't think it's just the coaches or the leagues. I think it's a culture that we live in, that we have these parents who are living vicariously through their children. And that's the scary part. Very few of which have been athletes. I think one of the last times we heard you 4 or 5 years ago, you had everybody raise your hand if you've played high school, any sport in high school. And then half the people got up. And then you got all the way down to college and D1 and then anything higher than that. And there wasn't anybody in the room. I mean, it's an amazing thought that here we are, we're trying to nurture our kids the best they can, yet we're putting them into a pressure cooker of sports, which at the end of the day is just sports. It's just a game. Right.
I was also a really late bloomer. I was a rower, and I found that when I was 13, but ended up totally clicking with it and went far. And I think about these tryouts and these kind of opportunities that kids miss by having such specialization. If I had not explored all those other sports like soccer and t-ball and softball and tennis and like everything else that I was horrible at, if I hadn't had those opportunities, I wouldn't have ever had the chance to find what I was good at. And I feel like there's so much pressure for the kids to be in that one sport. They never actually have the opportunity to discover something about themselves that they might not have had they, been able to play everything. And then, hey, they're 14 and oh my gosh, I never tried this, but look, I'm really good at it. Like they just developed in that way. And one of my questions is directed to Dr. Riley. In this whole stratification process, I have 3 kids. My middle is 10, and he played balanced baseball in the town, and the coach actually, he never tried out for anything, and the coach actually is the one who gave him not a lot of playing time because he's not a superstar at baseball, but he enjoyed it. He does 3 other sports and he's doing lots of stuff, but I feel like this stratification is rewarding the kids that are doing as an example, baseball, but it could, plug in your sport, soccer, or anything. It's rewarding those kids, and then the other kids are getting knocked down. And I'm just wondering if in your practice or in your experience, you're seeing that that's having like a long-term psychological effect, kind of in an across-the-board sort of way. Like, do you notice a trend among that? Because my daughter tried out for soccer at third grade or whatever it was, and she didn't make it, and she was like, oh, well, I guess I'm not a good soccer player, which is so disappointing to me because she's a good athlete, but she just hadn't developed in that area. And I just wondered if you've seen a trend in your practice, or if this is something that's kind of pervasive in like these types of suburbs, or just your general thoughts on that.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I find the biggest difficulties come when kids are defining themselves by one sport or being just good at this one thing, and that's the whole of their identity instead of looking at what else. So I really enjoyed hearing the part where you said you tried so many things before you figured out what you liked, but you were trying other things. I think it gets even more complicated when kids tend to be really good, and then they have this either coaches or parents advocating for them to get more playing time, or if they fail, then it was somebody else's fault, or that ref wasn't doing his job, or then it comes with this added pressure from behind. And when I talk to my kids, or my own kids, or when I talk to the kids that I work with, I say, okay, so this is your plan A, but what's your plan B? And what's your plan C? Because unfortunately, some kids will have injuries, or some kids might not make it to a particular piece. Then I think the long-term negative effects is when they haven't built enough self-awareness or resilience to then be able to, on their own, figure out how to manage that. Because either parents have come to the rescue, or they've gotten in particular teams because coaches have talked about getting them on particular teams. And so I think we have to be very mindful to give kids the kind of skills that they need. Even if they're super athletes and they're doing really well, they need to have plan B and plan C. And so I think the kids that don't have that and then all of a sudden find themselves lost are the ones that do worse long term. We see this a lot as they transition into college. We're getting an incredible amount of freshmen in college that are really falling apart emotionally, and it's because they get to a place where they have lost that identity of who they were, or something happens that prevents them from playing, and they haven't developed enough self-awareness to say, you know what, okay, but I'm really good at this, and I'm going to try that, and then be able to persevere in doing that.
Here, another strategy that our organization is trying to follow in terms of like what can we do about this in our community is to build a strong intramural program at both the middle school and ultimately at the high school, where kids would have a real good program that they can participate in, that they enjoy, that is just no cuts, everyone plays, we balance the teams, and you all play against one another, and you have fun doing it. And the same thing up at the high school, because if you think of it, if they know that they have that, and it's good, it's got to be good, and what we have here right now is not. Okay? So that doesn't exist for them, right? But if it was there, and it was good, and they had it to look forward to, they could say, I don't really care about making the varsity basketball team. There's like an awesome intramural league that the kids have a blast playing in, so I'm going to be an intramural basketball player. And just takes all the, don't worry about being a varsity basketball player. It's like the kids in intramural are having equal levels, maybe more fun. And set something like that up for them in this town. We can totally do that again. It might take us time to do that, but we are definitely, the high school right now, it is going through a comprehensive study of their athletic program this year. They just had 3 focus group meetings with over 100 parents. They've met with students, they're surveying, and the principal's reporting back to the superintendent at the end of this year. And when they get that all together, they're going to take a look at what are we going to do here. And they are going to get plenty of feedback, so that, and we've been communicating with them and have offered our assistance in helping them take a look at, I think right here at Wellesley Middle School, I've had 3 kids come through the school. I mean, it is just, we are missing the boat in terms of what we could be providing for these kids. If we've got, take basketball for example, we have the boys, we have an 8th grade boys and girls program, that's it. 2 teams, okay? They have probably 60 kids try out for each team, and they cut 30 of them in 8th grade, okay? To form 2 teams of 15 players, all right? And then they go play, you know, Waltham Middle School in some horrible quality game that means nothing to any of them, versus our Wellesley Youth Basketball program. Our town league is an unbelievable league because the kids all play against each other, okay? They do a great job, they balance the teams out, okay? These kids, there was an epic championship game here a couple weeks ago, town league, middle school basketball. Like, I think there were like 75 students who came just to watch the game. And why was that game so great? Because it was like friend playing against friend, you know? The 2 kids, the buddies playing against each other. That's what matters to these kids. And they don't even have the opportunity to do it. And we could have that at the middle school and the high school where they're getting those great experiences. All this competitive stuff, you know, it's all of a sudden, it's not as vital. Now, you may have some kids who still like, yeah, you know what, I am absolutely want to go make that varsity team. That's fine, go do it. But, you know, that'll be the kid's decision. So.
Bob, this question is for you. In your crusade, and I respect your passion for what you've tried to accomplish over the last 25 years, could you share with the group how a community has got the genie back in the bottle? Because once the genie is out of the bottle, he or she is never going back in. So forget the high school age groups, forget even the middle school age groups. Where have you seen a town or a community in the United States where they've been able to get that 3rd grade and 4th grade program right versus what we've talked about this evening?
Okay. 3rd and 4th grade baseball players playing in the same grade. That's unbelievable, Joe. I mean, that is really, talk about genie back in the bottle. That's a huge victory in my world. It's not my world, it's his. I have spoken, the number is somewhere between 600 and 700 American communities since 1991. Out of all of them, my guess would be no more than 10%, 60 or 70, have actually dialed it back a bit. And it's not all sports. It might be one sport like basketball, it might be lacrosse, the whole bit. In that way, I have failed, because I would like to think that by coming to town and explaining and getting some people to think that maybe we could dial it back. The genie in the bottle, the horse out of the barn, is a very, very good description. The challenge you have, and someone mentioned that none of the board members of organized youth sports in this town are here tonight. The challenge you have is none of them have her background. The 2 most important backgrounds, if you really want to shape youth sports the right way, are child development and physical education. My guess is out of all your boards, well, you're on the baseball board, Joe, you have no one with any sort of professional background in those 2 subject matters. I'll tell you what you do have, though, a whole lot of people who played high school sports and watch ESPN. Maybe the 2 worst backgrounds for being involved with kids in sports. So we start with that. By the way, Nadja, growth versus fixed. Is that Carol Dweck? Yes, it is. Stanford University. By the way, you talk about it in kids. Let's talk about it in adults. How many people get involved in these youth sports and they have a growth mindset or they have a fixed mindset? Look this way, folks. Way too many of them don't have a freaking clue about what they're doing. But this is what they do know. We got to set our kids on the A, B, and C track by the time they're in 3rd grade. Because if we don't, Natick will. And Waltham and Walpole will. And how the heck are we ever going to beat them in A games if we don't show them our least worst players? Notice I don't say better. I never do. They're not any good. They're just less worse. So the challenge is, where do we get a growth mindset? Or a Joe Roberts? Or someone who has a freaking clue that this is all about the kids. All the kids. Not just our prize cattle. By the way, Nadja, I'm going to take you back to your master's degree. There were two great Swiss child psychologists, I think in the early 1900s. One was Piaget. Who's the other guy? I can never remember his name. You remember?
You know, I'm with you with Piaget. I forget.
Piaget. It wasn't Piaget. It was the other guy. Whatever his name is, I'll figure it out. You can Google it. Right? Greatest line ever. Applies particularly to what some people have said tonight. Early ripe, early rot. Great phrase. Best I've ever read. And by the way, the science is now out there. The last 10 years, as our youth sports in this country has become far more specialized, they have done studies on what happens to these kids. It's simple. It's early ripe, early rot. Do they get better? Less worse early? Yes, they do. The more time they put into it, the better, less worse they are. Do they end up better later on? No. It's the multi-sport athletes that eventually come through the system. They get better.
One more ray of hope in terms of like being able to make some sort of progress on this whole thing is what we've talked about our organization. What's our strategy? How do we? Because it's a tough thing to turn, right? It is a tough thing to turn. Well, what would turn it? I think, and our plan is we haven't done this yet, but we plan to. Is I think you got to get some very high-profile athletes behind this message. Okay. Tom Brady, within the last 2 months, if you look it up, tweeted something basically on the subject. He was doing a radio interview, and somehow he was talking about his kids. He's got a couple of young kids that play ball, and he basically was like, "Wow, this is a lot different than when I grew up." And he said, "I hope my kid's a late bloomer." You know, basically saying, because I don't want him in the middle of any of this crap. If we can, if anybody knows Tom, I can give us some touch of Tom. But if we can get, whether it's him, and there's other athletes out there that I think really do, they've got the perspective, and if we can get some high profile, and Bob, I mean, the work you've been doing is unbelievable, and put a team together of people that can just help get that message out, help get people to pay attention to it. You're not going to get them all, but you may start turning that trend a little bit.
By the way, Joe, there's probably never been an athletic deity in this region other than maybe Bobby Orr and Larry Bird, like Tom Brady. First year of football, freshman year, winless team. Winless. His father wouldn't let him play until freshman year. Goes through San Mateo High School in California, gets recruited by Michigan, played off and on at Michigan until his senior year with Drew Henson, a great athlete from Michigan, who ended up trying to play baseball in the Yankee system. Anybody remember where young Mr. Brady was drafted by the Patriots? And don't let anybody in the Patriots organization ever tell you that, yeah, we knew he was going to be this good. They drafted him 199. There were 6 quarterbacks drafted in front of them, all of whom flamed out in a few years. Tom Brady may be the best ever. He's certainly up there in the conversation. All right? Late bloomers? Are you kidding me? Now he's got kids at youth sports age. I know his oldest son is playing hockey. I see pictures every now and then. Be interesting to see what Tom and his wife think about youth hockey and what's going on in those rinks. Very interesting.
Voiced his opinion, so we'll see if we can get him.
I think one thing I'd want to say is that one of the things that I think can change is you got to look at yourself. I mean, I think that we're the ones that are pushing our kids. We're the ones that feel like, oh, if we can't get little Johnny on the A team in 8th grade, he's never going to amount. I mean, we're the ones that are buying into this whole idea of keeping up with the Joneses. And I think that there are medical reasons not to do that. I think there are psychological reasons not to do that. I think we're the ones that have to change. We're the ones that have to say, I'm not going to pay another $1,500 for this kid to play AAU, whatever. So, I think it has to start on some level with us before it can.
Yeah, I would say to ask the question, start backwards. What's the end game? What are we ultimately trying to do? Is the club soccer trying to tell you that you're gonna get a college scholarship, right? So that's why you got to start in the 3rd grade. Well, look at the numbers. I mean, high school athletes that play today that actually go on to play at the NC2A Division I or Division II level are like percents. It's small. And then the kids that go on to actually get financial assistance, there are really no full rides unless it's football and mage or basketball, but it's partial. They're partialing out scholarships. The average, I think, financial aid scholarship at NC2A level is about $6,800 a year. The average academic scholarship that students are getting are like 15 to 20 grand a year. If you're going to focus time, I'd focus on the academics. Seriously, I mean, if you're chasing academic scholarship, don't expect a whole lot of money.
By the way, I will augment Glenn's numbers here. I keep these up here for special occasions like tonight. Okay? If you are a senior athlete in high school in America and you think you're going to get a full athletic scholarship to somewhere, Division I or Division II, you have a 1 in 275 chance. So line yourself up with 274 other athletes. There you go. One of you gets the scholarship. Second thing, to Glenn's point, right, for every dollar of athletic scholarship in this country, the number I've read most frequently, $73 of academic scholarships. 73 to 1. So as Glenn says, throw your kid in the library. That's where the money is.
Well, the thing is, this around here, probably is it's not so much about getting athletics scholarship.
Yeah, you're right.
It's getting them into where you went to school. That they're trying, or an equivalent. And they're trying to, position
Which only
it that
cost
way.
$6,000 back in 1995.
Yeah, right.
Those are good old days.
But that's really what, that's another part of the problem. And then you see people getting recruited when they're, I have friends now that have daughters that are getting recruited as freshmen and sophomore. You talk about, early rot. If I'm a college coach, I'm betting my job on some kid that I'm recruiting when they're a freshman or a sophomore in high school, and they might never even grow again. It's crazy.
Yeah,
but
lacrosse has been bigger than
Then there's the question of, if your kid is even good enough to play a college sport, do they really want it? Will they really want to play it when they get there? And do you want them to play it when they get there? Because the demands, whether it's Division I, II, or III, the demands on college athletes these days is completely out of control. It's just another part of this country
Or they're just using it to get into school.
Off the map.
We have a lot of friends that used it to get into schools and then have quit. Literally, they've pushed their kids. And
It's just out of control. So, and that's, again, we're just trying to just help get the message out there to these parents. Like, you know what? Love sports, intramurals in college, not a bad deal. They're having fun. They play a couple times a week and they're regular college kids. So, the clubs are getting a little, so.
Well, and just to follow up on the point that Dr. Yen made, taking a look at ourselves, I think, it's easy to feel like the loner on each of our individual kids' teams, as the lone voice of reason. But just to remember that for each of us to use every opportunity that we can to provide feedback to these boards. So, certainly my greatest familiarity is with soccer because that's my daughter's, identified sport. That's her thing. Wellesley United invites, feedback at the end of the season. They have their board meeting where they invite parents to come. I think all of us should use every opportunity. The more voices they hear, the more weight those voices will carry.
We thank you. We are going to wrap up here. I'd say one thing is we're videotaping this whole presentation, right? We're going to have it. We'll have it up online somewhere. Well, sometime we'll let everyone know. And I think a great thing, if possible, if you'd be willing to do, share it out with whoever you can, however you can. Like, hey, this was a really good talk. You should get, listen up and just, that type of a grassroots effort, at least like right here in our town. That'll get us started. And we're just going to keep working on it, and little by little, get together with our youth sports organizations, make some progress there, and life's a work in progress. So, hopefully we'll just keep getting one step further as we go along. But thank you, Dan. I just want to say thank you, Bob, all of our panelists, Naja, Ben, Glenn, John, Chris, Leon Moore, everyone who made this happen. Thank you so much.